Hello, my name is Raven Qara, and I live in the Principality of the Summits in the Kingdom of Antir. I've been researching Scythians and other nomads for about 35 years with a focus on textiles and clothing. In this class, I'll provide a brief introduction to the Scythians. Then we'll examine a range of Scythian accessories, including shoes, stockings, belts, pouches, and more. We'll look at evidence from period depictions, archaeological finds, and modern museum reconstructions. The Scythians were a nomadic Indo-Iranian people who ranged across the Central Asian steppes from about the 8th to the 2nd centuries BCE. The two lighter green bands on this map show the extent of their territory at its peak. They interacted through trading and raiding with many settled cultures, including Greeks on the northern Black Sea and modern Ukraine, Assyrians and Persians across the Near and Middle East, Bactrians in modern Afghanistan and northern India, and the Chinese through the Altai Mountains at the conjunction of modern South Siberia, East Kazakhstan, West Mongolia, and northern China. Unfortunately, the Scythians did not have a written language, so what we know of their customs and beliefs comes from contemporary historians from other cultures, such as Greek Herodotus and Roman Pliny the Elder, along with extrapolation based on surrounding peoples. Fortunately, the archaeological record offers many clues about their society. The Eurasian steppes are still dotted with burial mounds called kurgans, which yield rich material culture, including gold ornaments, bronze and iron weapons, textiles, wood carvings, sacrificial horses, and human mummies, some of which have some of the world's oldest surviving tattoos. The Scythians had a distinctive art style that scholars call the animal style, involving powerful animals in predator-prey relationships, and hybrid or transforming animals, to a degree that could be described as psychedelic. In some cases this may be literally true, as they used marijuana, opium, and ephedra for ritual and likely recreational purposes. They loved all kinds of gold ornaments and objects, and their textile art makes frequent use of bold and colorful applique in felt and leather. The vast majority of surviving Scythian textiles, including many of the objects I'll discuss, come from a spectacular series of burials in the Altai Mountains. Still being excavated and analyzed today, these burials were frozen in permafrost and so retained a tremendous amount of perishable material, unlike the burials to the west. This Scythian subgroup is now referred to as the Pazyryk culture, named for a noteworthy burial complex. So let's take a look at men's shoes. There are many contemporary depictions of Scythian men, particularly in metalwork. Some pieces were made by the Scythians, and others by Greek craftsmen for Scythian patrons. The depiction of Scythians in these items is very consistent, and includes soft, short boots that rise just above the ankle. These shoes usually have a natural rounded toe, and are clearly made of leather or felt that is thin enough to flex easily. It makes sense that people who mostly rode without stirrups wouldn't need stiff, heavy shoes. The shoes tend to have a strap around the ankle, and often under the instep as well. The strap may have been simply tied, or when the strap wraps both the ankle and the instep, it could be a contiguous piece wrapped in a figure eight. If we look very closely at this example, it appears that there is a slit or loop in one end of the strap that the other end passes through. I don't see an indication in the images of a center top seam on the shoes, so it's likely the upper was a single piece, with a seam up the heel and a separate sole. The leg piece would also have a seam up the back, and could be attached where the ankle meets the leg, as this seam would be covered by the strap. This shoe has unique striations, which could indicate leather tooling, decorative stitching, or possibly quilting on felt. I've only seen a few examples where the shoe has a pointed toe, like this one on the Gaimanova cup. Here's a redrawing that makes it a little more clear. Another example is this Thracian coin depicting a Scythian king. Despite all these images, I haven't seen an intact example of the short shoe in archaeology. However, there are several finds of knee-high boots for men. This is the famous Golden Man from southeast Kazakhstan. In this find, and the next three I'll show you, only microscopic fragments of textile survived, so the clothing is largely conjectural, based on placement of metal plaques. The man at Baigitobe in the Kazakh Altai also had boots decorated with gold plaques. And in these reconstructions of boots from Arjan II and Beryl, the curved gold panel below the knee is metal. This unusual man's boot from Bashadar did survive intact. It has an incised leather upper and a leg made of checkerboard pieces of fur. If anyone has seen a photo of this, please let me know. And here's a depiction of a Scythian man wearing tall boots similar to the finds. It looks like there might be a seam, or at least a line of shaping stitches just above the ankle, a feature we'll see in some Altai stockings later. In women's footwear, we have the opposite situation, more textile finds than depictions. When we see Scythian women, they tend to wear long gowns or skirts, which makes it hard to tell much about their shoes. What we can see matches the rounded toe of the men's shoes, but it's harder to judge height. In this example, we can't tell if the shoes extend above the ankle. Fortunately, the Altai finds have some great examples. In this pair of boots, the upper is one piece of leather with a seam at the back and a gathered toe, attached to a small peanut-shaped sole. The upper and the leg are decorated with cutwork, applique, and sinew thread wrapped in tin foil. The leg is open at the back. The ankle has a band of red woolen braid decorated with leather ducks covered in gold foil. Even the soles are embroidered with red wool, foil-wrapped sinew, small black beads, and pyrite pieces. The same woman's grave had this pair of boots with the same construction. They have a leather upper and a leg of leopard fur. The sole is tooled leather. There is red woolen braid at the ankle and the top opening. The cuff is embellished with tin and gold-wrapped sinew thread. Here's a different type of woman's shoe from a find in the Ukraine. Enough textile survived to extrapolate this reconstruction. Unlike others we've seen, it has a centered top seam, stops at the ankle, and has a cord gathering the opening. This example from the same region is very similar. Made of red leather, it has a clever single-piece layout with a center top seam and another seam up the heel. The sole is reinforced with an additional piece, and again a drawstring gathers the opening. Another type of footwear that appears throughout the Altai burials are long white felt stockings, or stocking boots. Ranging from knee to thigh length, they were worn by men and women. These two pairs of stockings were worn layered inside the woman's boots from Pazyryk II, and were probably damaged when the tomb was robbed of its gold objects soon after burial. Like other Altai footwear, they have the gathered toe and a small peanut-shaped sole. These thigh-high boots are from the famous Ice Maiden burial at Ak-Alacha III. They have a red sole and a seam all the way up the back. A strip of red wool braid wraps from the top of the foot to above the heel. Because this feature appears repeatedly in these finds, I believe it shaped and reinforced the stocking rather than being purely decorative. These boots are from a man's burial at Verkhalgin in the Altai. They have the same red braid, but also have an upper reinforced with leather. This fancy pair of man's stockings are made of thick white felt stitched with hemp thread. Like some of the other Pazyryk examples, they have a curved shaping seam at the top of the foot. The leg opening has a band of colorful felt applique. And here's a man's pair of plain felt stockings, also from Pazyryk, and following the same construction. The long stocking boots from burials have parallels in male depictions from the same region. This Siberian belt plaque offers a wealth of costume information. Note how the leggings of the recumbent man resemble the stockings from the burials. There is a contiguous strap around the ankle and instep, similar to the short boot depictions. There are also incised lines from the thigh to below the knee that could indicate seams or quilting. I believe this represents an extra layer of felt or leather to protect the leg, similar to some modern jodhpurs. On this felt hanging from Pazyryk, the man's stockings have the same line down the thigh and under the knee, and a line along the ankle that resembles the placement of braid in the finds. A padded knee could also be useful when kneeling on the ground to shoot a bow. We see the same lines again on this figurine of a rider. The foot and part of the calf of the stockings appear to be made of spotted material, perhaps leopard fur, like the boots from Pazyryk II. There are even stocking depictions further west. A dress helmet from the Ukraine shows combat between two groups of Scythians, with meticulous detail in their attire. This man has stocking boots with seams on the inside and outside of the leg, and possibly a separate sole. His opponent has stocking boots with a seam up the back, a band around the ankle which is drawn in the material a little, and what appear to be two rounded tabs with a small hole at the end. The lack of definition on the legs of these figures makes me think these are felt stocking boots rather than leather or woven pants or tights. This depiction from the northern Caucasus is much cruder, yet still calls out the ankle band and tabs. I'm really curious about these tabs. Perhaps they could be fastened under the instep as a kind of stirrup pants. But if so, why are they unfastened in these images? Although belts in depictions of Scythians tend to be just simple bands, the belts found in burials are anything but plain, often embellished with numerous metal buckles, plaques, and studs. Among the most famous Scythian ornaments are these large gold or bronze belt plaques, which often depict animal or human combat, or scenes from legend. They were often made in mirror image pairs. I'm not sure exactly how they fastened. One possibility is a simple hook and loop closure, or a thong or cord could be threaded through the plaques. Many of these were collected in the 18th century without context, so it's hard to say if they were worn by women as well as men. Finds from Kazakhstan yield some spectacular belt plaques, like this reconstruction of the Golden Man, with a wide belt at the waist and a narrower belt below, both supporting swords. This find in the Kazakh Altai has plaques and decorative metal pendants reminiscent of the Roman cingulum militare, or military apron, seen several centuries later. Another belt plaque example belonged to the man in the Arjan II burial. Again, the hanging straps probably supported weapons. A common Scythian armor belt consists of narrow vertical strips of bronze or iron mounted on leather, such as the example shown on this magnificent comb. Often these belts had rounded, pierced ends that were fastened with a thong or cord, as in this reconstruction based on Ukraine finds. Several leather belt fragments survived at Pazyryk, but we don't know if they belonged to men or women. This leather belt is embroidered with tiny sinew stitches 2 millimeters long, placed so closely that the belt looks like fabric. It is also embellished in tinfoil-wrapped sinew thread and cutouts of gold foil. I'm not sure how this is fastened, but since there's no clear attachment and the leather seems too thin to be its own hook, I think this was a dangling end. This belt, with two cast and stamped silver plaques, has the same tiny stitches, foil-wrapped sinew, and gold cutouts. The two pendant straps may have been used to hang a weapon. These two cast silver horses were probably also pendants from a belt. This band is embellished with dimensional leather roosters. It's not known if it was a belt or some other type of strap, but the roosters are similar to ones decorating a woman's headdress in the same burial. In a rare example that is neither metal nor leather, this man's belt is made of braided wool yarn and has a wood buckle with a fixed tongue. One belt that definitely belonged to a woman is this tasseled cord worn by the Ice Maiden to hold up her skirt. The belt is about 78 inches long, including the elaborate tassels. The Pazyryk burials contained many fur, felt, and leather pouches, usually constructed with sinew thread. We don't know if any were worn on a belt, but some certainly could have been. This 14-inch long flat pouch has one side of inlay applique in white and blue fur on thin leather, and another side of leopard fur. This flat suede pouch has leather applique of a bird of prey attacking another bird. It contained cannabis seeds and was found with a brazier used to heat the seeds, as well as a very small tent in which to enjoy the fumes. This intoxicating rite was described by Herodotus. Another leather pouch with a narrow mouth is about 12 by 15 inches and had this inlay applique of blue and white fur and red leather. It contained pieces of cheese. Here's a flask-shaped leather pouch with complex piecing, decorated with leather applique. It could not hold liquid, so perhaps it was used for seeds or roots like those found in similar containers. This leather pouch has a flap over an interior pocket. The flap is made of that popular leopard's fur, with a top border of leather applique, and is edged with red felt and stamped copper geese covered with gold leaf. The interior pocket is surprisingly complex, with a narrowed opening. The pouch contained coriander seed, which was imported from Central Asia. It was burned as incense and possibly used as medicine, since the Ice Maiden had a number of ailments when she died. Here is a similar leather pouch with a flap, 8 by 12 inches. The top is attached to a carved stick with a pocket on either side. Its leather strap attached to a wooden ring and could have hung from a belt or saddle. It contained a silver mirror and other objects. This small pouch is made from one piece of thick leather, closed by a strap. It has holes for some kind of attachment. It is embellished with tooling and tiny gold plaques. This unusual Pazyryk bag is made of silk fabric that was imported from China during the late Warring States period. The fabric is plain weave and has a thread count of 30 by 50 threads per square centimeter. These small leather amulets contained human hair and fingernail clippings. Based on many cultures in the ethnographic record, we can infer that this represented an animistic belief that every part of the body contained part of the soul, and that these residues should be protected to avoid being used for magic or by evil spirits. Scythian women were frequently buried with mirrors, and while it's a cliché in archaeology to say that something has religious significance, it's highly likely that these served as more than just a beauty item. There are several depictions of women or goddesses holding mirrors, like this plaque we saw earlier, and this diadem from Chertomlik. In the ethnographic record, mirrors are an important ritual object in Siberian shamanism, as well as in Mongolia, China, and other cultures. Mirrors found in Scythian graves are usually round, though sometimes oval or rectangular, and are made of silver or bronze. Some are backed in gold or set in wood. Some have handles, often modeled on Greek examples, although this one has a distinctly Scythian handle. Recent analysis shows that the silver portion of this Pazyryk mirror came from India, with an added horn handle. Mirrors sometimes had carrying cases which hung from the belt. The Ice Maiden had a felt case for a small rectangular bronze mirror set in wood. A very thin bronze mirror from Pazyryk II had a leopard fur case decorated with beads, and leather mirror cases were found at Verkhalgin II and Taksai I. Another variety of Scythian mirrors are small and round without handles, or just a central knob. These were sometimes imported from China, like this silver example made during the Warring States period, which measures only 4.5 inches across. And this gold-backed mirror seems to combine Greek, Asian, and nomadic elements in a uniquely Scythian way. A common man's belt item are these cylindrical stones capped with gold, usually described as whetstones, although some scholars believe they served other purposes, such as a touchstone for testing gold composition, or, you guessed it, items of religious significance. Scythian jewelry and weapons are topics too big to tackle in this class, so I'll stop there. I hope you've enjoyed this exploration of Scythian accessories, and I hope you are now inspired to make some gorgeous accessories of your own. Here's some resources to get you started, and please feel free to leave your comments or questions below.